isn't it right that I teach them how to use the actions? And so it wouldn't matter whether it was NAPLAN, online demand testing, or any text you had the kids reading. Now the test that comes closest, the commercial test, that comes closest to doing anything like this, of course, is the torch. The torch comes closest to giving you this sort of information. I mean, things like the Neal analysis doesn't give you this. You know, you can give the Neal analysis, you can give the paragraph reading test, some of the other tests, but they won't give you these sort of data already done. All I'm doing is saying what the different tests do. Okay, so I'll have in my notes for next time this article that I've written about this. Are there any other questions about using it? Now, so that to come at those questions we were talking about earlier, Alana and James, is this okay? Yeah. So what Alana said was building these sort of things in can really help to make it more meaningful and moving it closer to the classroom. But I think it would be a great activity for the teachers to engage in, because there's nothing better than you putting yourself into the realm of being a teacher. Yep. Yeah, and so we've got then what you'd be saying there is that in order to answer that question, if they had to link something between the first and the fourth, there was one text about elephants and why elephants lost their wings and what emus lost their wings, wasn't there? And the elephants landed in the tree and the branch broke and upset the guy. And the answer to that question was there were two or three paragraphs in between. And in order to answer the question, you basically had to visualise across 3 paragraphs and then go back and look at the image in your mind. Well, we need to say that. If that's what's required, we need to say that in order to target the kids' learning. I agree with you totally. Or,
the other part you didn't mention was the misconceptions the kids make. But in that same grade 3 NAP plan,
yep.
Mark was about the 2 reaches to 5 places of the sun.
Yep.
One was a show off. The question was which one was a show off? It was show off and hero.
Yep.
A lot of kids chose hero instead of show off. So sometimes the misconceptions you had to see that she's on the 3rd column.
Yep.
To give you clues into what the kids were thinking.
Yep. That was, see, I put that one under vocab. I thought that was to do with the meaning. But that particular, it's really great to mention that, because that particular example, that was a bit ambiguous as well. There was, you had to recognise a synonym. You see, one of the, there's so much in all of this when you start to unpack it. One of the issues in that, so what's your first name? One of the things that Rick's raising was there was a word used, and as I remember, there was a synonym, another noun was used instead of it, a bit further down, to do with it being the guy being a show-off. I think was boast mentioned, or he was bragging or boasting or something. That's why he sent him, because he was bragging. And so the kids had to see that bragging meant the same as show-off, not hero. And that's right. And so if your vocab wasn't, if you hadn't worked on synonyms, your children wouldn't have known the meaning. So this vocab business is very important. Anyway, we'll do that paper and we'll come back to this. Okay, we've talked about the importance of the summative data, of the normative data. The summative data, the data you collect where you give the children the assessment at the end, or they do the NAP plan or the online assessment, if you're using it for summative purposes, that's important. But we also need to collect the formative data. And as I mentioned before, if I was talking about teacher knowledge, formative data for me was how often the teachers would talk about the kids' learning problems and how they had them learn better. Or the formative data would be, for me, what the children could tell me before I began teaching the new material. Tell me what they had in their mind already. That's really assessment for learning. You know, me putting out feelers to see what the children do know. And I'm really wanting to push the formative data. We need that as well as this. The formative data, the data that I use to decide where my teaching is going to go next is really important there. And I've talked there about gathering feedback from the students. As I said, and you all laughed, you all thought I was silly when I said that each child is really a little unit of knowledge. And that part of that knowledge is their emotional aspects. And I want to know, I mean, to what extent do students in my teaching feel that what they know is used and valued? To what extent do they feel engaged? And as we said, and Laura agrees with me totally, it's not smiling that they're engaged. It's them asking questions. How many of them actually see themselves learning the new ideas? I always remember some stuff that we were doing at Doveton Secondary College when we brought in the knowledge book, and where we had the children actually write down things they'd learnt in each lesson at the end of the lesson. And some of the children at the end, when we reviewed it, said they hadn't realised that teachers at school cared about what they learnt, you know, or some of them didn't even see. Well, I mean, you'd say, oh, well, it's Doveton, but I mean, damn it, I mean, the kids in Doveton are as important as anywhere else. And, you know, it's important that they see that people value their learning and that they're at school, you know, in order to learn. So what I'm saying is if we gather feedback from the students, this can be part of that formative data, because it's data that I have to respond to. If more than half the kids in my class don't feel that their existing knowledge is valued, I'd better change what I'm doing. Because all learning starts with what people know. Or if they don't feel engaged, then I'm not earning half of my paycheck. I better start giving back half of my paycheck. So I'm really keen to have the students have us gathering that sort of data. And again, this is going to be important for the embedding. Now, one question that it would be reasonable for everyone here to say is, how do we actually convince our schools that this is important? And we have to talk